So weird.
Yeah.
And yet it's so reassuring because I did forget to record one of the programs I hosted in January, and it was a great conversation, and I was so mad that I had forgotten to record it. And so when I hear that robot voice, it makes me feel great. Like I remembered.
I guess it's also kind of like to warn somebody, like if they don't know they're being recorded, which is really, really creepy.
Hey, Jeffrey Tubin, this is being recorded.
This is you.
Your video capabilities are enabled. Welcome, everybody. We're just going to wait a couple more seconds, a minute, to see how many people we get in here, and we'll be starting. Thanks for being here.
Karina, are you at home right now?
Yes.
Oh,
Looks like Karina's house.
It's my patio. You've been here.
I've been on that patio a million times, but that looks different to me.
It does. It looks like you're like outside a place of business, you know, like a nice like a business building.
Well, it just looks breezier than it looks at my house. That's my question. It looks lovely.
Well, it's an illusion created by these tapestries that I have that blow behind me, and the fact that I have live plant matter that sort of moves. So also I got cafe lights. Should I turn them on?
Ooh.
Yeah, why not?
It makes it festive. You can only see like 2 of them, but see, there are lots of them.
Well, now you're really at a fine establishment.
Even blinking.
It ain't that fine.
All right, I think it's about time to get started. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for the latest installment of Novel at Home, a series of virtual author events bringing authors to your living room or home office or patio or lovely front porch, wherever you're Zooming these days. My name is Kat Leach, and I'm the social media and promotions coordinator at Novel. Your support is so valuable to a small business like ours, and we appreciate you being here tonight. We are thrilled to be hosting a virtual launch party for poet Caki Wilkinson, whose 3rd collection, The Survival Expo, was published just today. Yay! Our other special guests include some of Wilkinson's fellow poet academics, Karina McGlynn and Marcus Wicker. All 3 will be reading original poetry this evening, and I, for one, can't wait to sit back and enjoy. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. After I introduce our guests, I'll hide my video during their readings. Please use the Q&A feature of Zoom to ask any questions you might have, but feel free to enter your question at any time during the talk. You don't have to wait till the end. I'll be in the chat to answer any behind the scenes questions you have, and feel free to chat with each other as you enjoy the poetry. I'll also post links in the chat where you can order signed copies of the Survival Expo from novelmemphis.com. Without further delay, it's my honor to introduce tonight's guests. Karina McGlynn is a writer and collagist living in Memphis. Her newest poetry collection, Hot House, was a New York Times editor's choice. Other books include The 9-Day Queen Gets Lost on Her Way to the Execution, I Have to Go Back to 1994 and Kill a Girl, and Scorpionica. Her poems have recently appeared in the Kenyon Review, Tupelo Quarterly, Ninth Letter, Georgia Review, New England Review, Best American Poetry, and the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day. Karina is an assistant professor of creative writing at Christian Brothers University and teaches with Tennessee Young Writers Workshop. This evening, we're also proud to welcome Marcus Wicker, the author of Silencer, which was the winner of the Society of Midland Authors Award, and Maybe the Saddest Thing, selected by D.A. Powell for the National Poetry Series. He's the recipient of a 2021 National Endowment for the Arts Creative Writing Fellowship, a Tennessee Arts Fellowship, a Pushcart Prize, 2011 Ruth Lilly Fellowship, as well as fellowships from the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown and Cave Canem. Wicker's poems have appeared in The Nation, The New Republic, The Atlantic, Oxford American, Poetry, and elsewhere. He is poetry editor of Southern Indiana Review and an associate professor of English at the University of Memphis, where he teaches in the MFA program. And now our featured poet, Caki Wilkinson. She's the author of 2 previous poetry collections, Circles Where the Head Should Be, which won the Vassar Miller Prize, and the Winona Stone Poems, which won the Lexi Rudnitsky Editor's Choice Award from Persia Books. She's the recipient of a Ruth Lilly Fellowship from the Poetry Foundation, a Tennessee Arts Commission Fellowship, and the Alan Tate Prize from the Sewanee Review. Poems from her new collection have appeared in The New Yorker, The Nation, Kenyon Review, and many other magazines. She lives in Memphis and is an associate professor of English at Rhodes College. Please join me in giving these amazing poets a warm virtual welcome.
Hey, thanks for that, Kat. And thanks for everyone who tuned in to see poetry on a Tuesday night. That was very cool of you. It brings me great joy to be here, both virtually and in Memphis, with 2 of my legit favorite poets and people. And I'm really excited to hear Caki read from the Survival Expo. It's such a sharp collection. It's gut punching. And if you don't have it, you should get it from Novel because it'll sell out. All right. So I've got 3 poems picked out for you, and then I'm just going to sit back and be a fan, if that's cool. Caki, help me with this. The NBA Finals are about to conclude. Is that right? Okay. So that probably makes some of you a little sad, but if I'm keeping it real, I am okay with it. Because this means that every time I go to the barbershop, I don't have to pretend like I know anybody's stats or really anything useful about basketball. But in retrospect, I was thinking about this morning, and it occurred to me that Caki was a star point guard from like kindergarten through college. And I could have been texting you, for like 4 years, different talking points. That's a mistake. In any event, here is a self-portrait with mixed up sports references. It starts with an epigraph from the Atlanta-based rap group Earth Gang, if you know them. And the epigraph is, "I'm so good at missing calls that I'm perfect this year." I'm no Dr. James Naismith, but you could say I stay checking myself. Like a ballerina driven inward by perfection and a sense of fair play. Fadeaway punter of the Saturday night invite, star pinch hitter of the rain delay. When I envied my team's pennants, I was the pennants. Often offside, the puck's been in my inbox like a kingfish bucking an antique reel. Call me Black Bobby Fischer, southpaw journeyman writing himself in the mirror with a thorny left jab. I keep my Rookie of the Year memorabilia mint, sealed in polyethylene sleeves, convex binders I thumb on any given Sunday. Hail Mary, full of suitcases. Hail Mary, full of stagnant airspace. You might say I've mastered the bounce pass with a catcher's mask, the give love and go underground. I'll call back when the season's over, could probably stand just a little more practice. Believe it or not, before the pandemic, I used to do really sensible things with my time. Like once a month, I'd watch Fox News to try and gauge at an alternate perspective or maybe reality, depending on who you are, maybe just to prove to myself that I'm well-rounded. And during one of those masochistic outings, I heard Ben Shapiro say, "It is impossible to come up with a fair metric for recompensing slavery 10 generations after slavery's end." And I took that as a challenge. So this is reparations metric, ending in assistant Schadenfreude. What apple? Which conquistador oats? Which ruby red moat? What fillet of bartered goat? Which glazed carrot caught your nose, drew you into the station with blinders on? Horse's ass, coiffed cad. What do you call a property tax on a revolving accessory? What's a loan without a lesser, B? Which of these eventualities is not like the other, free and clear from the shattering a mast of tears makes, when it fractures, scalpels away, silt, clean off a runaway cliff before gashing the quarry with aftershock. I'll take my safety net and breakneck class action union wage annuity checks from Ancestry.com, 23, and everybody who's made a killing trafficking in families and trees. Run me my knot money, untie my limbs, underwrite the court costs, plus notary fees to petition my change of surname. Now multiply that expense by a modest interest rate, accrued over 154 summers, give or take. Or strap weights to your ankles, go float in a lake. So this last one, I'm gonna read you one from Silencer because it's got a book birthday coming up, and I don't think that I've ever celebrated it, and that seems unfair. So I'm gonna read you this and then kick it off to Karyna, who also has a really excellent book coming out. This is called Film Noir at Gallup Park on the Edge. Of suburbia in flux behind one of the town's, count 'em, 2 mega high schools. The sometimes tended to nature preserve where green and green slide crisp between brisk handshakes, where a middle-aged Jimmy John's driver suddenly halts his 98 Corolla, goes noiseless, where the sun isn't exactly booming, but it's Sunday morning and I'm in my feelings. So I clop off a few paces, nice and easy like. I mouth, hello to the lovable maintenance man. Hello, lovable maintenance man, I nod. He fusses with his mustache, flicks it out in a full tilt wave. In the way of mise en scene, I feel compelled to say it's 2014. I'm a Black American poet, newly 30, and middle class for the Midwest. So far, it's the summer of 2 brothers unarmed, erased, posterized. 2 more, and I live my best days outside like this, under threat of rain. Me, my bad form, and no one looking on with the evil anvil of a hoisted eyebrow, the deceptive flip of an A-line bob, hand-readied to protect the old moneymaker. Accordingly, smoke. A slinky Asian teen makes his body into a nickel, wheels up the wide alley between me and the trail's opposite edge. Our shades, night slick, reflect one another. Different frames from about the same shelf. I catch myself for an instant in his left lens and wonder, was it the rocky look I'm rocking? Was it the bare bones, bone white, hooded Egyptian cotton tracksuit drawn tight around my head like a swim cap, it's summer here? Are the ox calves teetering a chest somewhere between barreled and breasted, depending on the wind? The Taylor Swift red grin of my diabolical office nemesis, or the moon cycle, maybe anything, thin. In the director's cut, I'm the one being fatally femme. I pretend to check my face in the rearview mirror, pull a plume from a pinner, and squeeze the trigger on a can of lavender Febreze. I chase myself out the window, smarting every time someone flinches at the sight of me. Metaphorically, I can only be the pitch dark asphalt simmering in this parking lot, the fog lifting off a black tar river already gone. Though, obviously, given the opportunity, nay the luck, I'd play delivery boy, even maintenance dude, anything but Walking Dead man. And I'll be damned if I didn't just run all this way to tell you that. Fuck. Thank you.
That was amazing, Marcus. Not that I was surprised. I can't believe I get to be y'all's friends. Like, what did I do to be able to deserve to live in the same city with these brilliant poets? And wow, I'm really happy to be here. Hi, everybody. Okay, I'm gonna read a couple of poems from my forthcoming book, 50 Things Kate Bush Taught Me About the Multiverse. I'm not doing, I don't think, specifically very Kate Bushy ones. I didn't think about that until it was too late. So, hey, that's all right. All right, this first one is called We Sing Mozart's Requiem in the Back of the Cruiser. And it's based on a real story about me being arrested for the first time. We sing Mozart's Requiem in the back of the cruiser. You and I are 17, and oops, we've just shoplifted black boots and Curve body spray from a box store. We were going clubbing. Now we're fleeing, and it's raining. Two men in black turtlenecks rush from behind, tackle us to the dark pavement. So we sing. We sing the saddest songs we know, the stuff we learned for choir competition, the year we came in third. We sing to keep from crying. Lacrimosa, we wail. Lacrimosa. The turtlenecks parade us down the aisles and shame us over the loudspeaker for the sake of other late-night, dead-eyed shoppers who might be likewise tempted to snatch a bright bauble for shame. A nauseating twist of agony in our harmony now that we are fallen. We worry hard about our fathers. We can't believe it when the cops handcuff us. We are sure they're just scaring us. Even when they stuff us in the back of the squad car, we wait for somebody to produce the key. As far as we understand, any singer who would express her remorse so beautifully and so publicly must be immediately unbound. Straighten up, ladies, they're supposed to say, cordially adjusting their heavy belts. Instead, they take us downtown. They lower the radio chatter to listen as we thunder, Dies irae, dies illa, day of wrath and doom impending. One officer softens, sorry for us. The other looks nervous. Hush now. We imagine our mothers, newly distraught and accosting our closets, side by side close up as they discover our plunder, heaps of it. Plaid skirts and mud jeans, vanilla candles, crystal clutches, full on fairy wings, marabou fans, thigh-high stockings balled into doll-sized silver backpacks with bottles of mini thins, gluey tubes of great lash, ironic kazoos, vials of black glitter, Schlitterbahn, shot glasses, or shit, that shiny corset with hellfire flickering up its cinch. And oh my God, the stolen hoop skirts, the light up wands that play magic arpeggios when waved at strangers. And what about those red stilettos with little padlocks at the ankles? Lord have mercy for our helpless mothers now quivering in the face of this ultimate failure. They sink to their knees in the twin spotlights of our separate klepto heavens. Kyrie eleison, sweet Lord Jesus, the day glow G-strings, all the lipsticks, lipsticks, lipsticks. Okay. All right, this is a piece that, fun fact, used to be called Persephone, but it was spelled like purse, like a handbag, like P-U-R-S-E. And even though it's one word, people kept going, purse phone? This is called purse phone? Like, you know, like I didn't know the word cell phone or something. You know, the phone that goes in your purse, my purse phone. Anyway, so that title didn't work. This title is called I Wake Up in the Underworld of My Own Dirty Purse. And I did write it before the pandemic, but it seems apt. All right, I wake up in the underworld of my own dirty purse. My stage name is Persephone. I perform nightly for a smattering of ill-informed tic-tacs. Now that I'm finally tiny, I only have two fears: that someone will leave my whole world in the sun unattended, and gravity's strap might one day strain and break. Down here, no one desires me, but there are relatively few decisions. What flavor gum to huff? How many grains of granola? I spend my time rolling around with lipsticks, matte nudes and Cabernet mistakes that looked better on the models. I bind my thighs with dental floss, finally learn the aerial arts. There are bobby pins. I have to watch myself. I become begummed, magnetized, things stick. Sometimes I can't shake them. For a whole week, I was working shit out with a broken necklace that had me ensnared by the hair. In my dark bordello, Bic lighters or barges, out in deep water, I taste the tang of their flint, sharpening, receding, hear the cargo sloshing, the boatswain's call at the far edge of my sanity. Sometimes keys wash up to me, all faint numbers and silver teeth. I no longer know what they open. More than once, I've considered setting the place on fire. So easy. Plenty to kindle, petrified pretzel logs, illegible receipts, and sometimes, incredibly, a tampon escaped from its casing, string like a fuse on a soft stick of dynamite. On hot nights, I unscrew my purse perfume and move my naked body like a question across the cool roller ball. She is a silent oracle who only answers in spirits and fumes. Pomegranate, lily of the valley, amber, wet fern, African violet. I have eternity to translate this olfactory code into a working escape plan. For lack of space, please help. This is what I've been reduced to. I hope someone up there is looking for me. I hope my mother is burning the goddamn crops. Okay. And this last piece that I'm going to read is situated in Memphis. It's called Halloween in the Anthropocene. Memphis is out in full fang. Skeletons skip down our pitted streets. Whole families with matching hobo stipple roam tragicomically through the sprawling candy deserts. Polka dot bandanas on sticks, flapping Chaplin-esque shoes. Unclaimed pumpkins pile high behind razor wire. The air's thick with caw and trouble. Our porch lights out, but we stay in, listening to the festive cackle of semi-automatics in the autumn night. Some faceless handmaids do a spooky hopscotch in a Walgreens parking lot. Two drunk men in tiger masks loll from the window of a passing truck to tell some handmaid she's thick as shit. Anyway, witches are back. They straddle plastic brooms, braver at night, streaming across the moon's bright knuckle. Hedge witches and wicked witches, waves of Sabrinas, blonde bobs, black headbands, whole hexes of freckles. Here come the Elphabas and Endoras, the Elviras and Elsas, even a couple of Baba Yagas, bewitched huts strutting forth on sexy chicken legs. So what if it's a bit more wink than wand? I mean, we've stopped scaring ourselves on purpose. Stopped wearing maybe our weirds on the outsides. My sweeties spilled out on the couch as melted clock. I park myself on the dark stoop as empty Pyrex bowl. According to the Post-it note on my face, my nickname is No Treats for the Wicked. I'm a weird white lady on an unlit porch. No one dare approach this childless abode. Not for phantom candy, certainly not for clarification. Okay, so we're gonna leave it at that with my weird white lady shtick. And I am so excited to introduce one of my best friends and an absolutely brilliant poet, Caki Wilkinson. And I assume many of you are already familiar with Caki's work and know and love it. And if you're not, just wow. I think one of the things I love most about Caki's work is the way that it seems so, approachable and friendly at first, and then the more you look at it, it keeps unlocking all these little sonic and technical Easter eggs. You keep going, when you look at it, and I love that. It's Southern, it's sly, it's surreal, it's sonic, and I think you're gonna love it. Please buy the Survival Expo right after this, and maybe you can even get Caki to sign it. Please give a big round of applause for Caki Wilkinson.
Thank you, Karina, and thank you, Marcus, and thank you, Kat, and thank you, Novel. It's a weird time to release a book, both in terms of the pandemic and also the summer and also a Tuesday. So thank you guys for being here. I have this kind of nervous habit where I chew my fingers, and so of course I'm bleeding right now. This happens frequently. I'm like, now what am I going to do with the blood? But thank you. Seriously, I mean, Karina and Marcus are two of my best buds here in Memphis, and it's just really nice to read with you, and to know that I'm going to see you in a bit. But I'm just gonna read a little sampling from the Survival Expo. I just only got my copy. I'll show it up here. My contributors' copies on Friday, and I'm really happy with how the book looks. And so I'm gonna read. I always end up reading the same poems when I read, but they're also they're kind of my favorite poems. So I'm gonna try to throw in a couple of surprises. But I'm also going to read some of the same ones I always read. So this is the first poem in the book, and it's called Jocks, and it's in the kind of first person plural, which you'll hear. Jocks. The back row in American history, already wearing away uniforms under our warm-ups, popping purple gum. Some of us in lipstick stolen from our mothers, others mistaken for our younger brothers, with buzz cuts, cornrows, jacked up ponytails. We didn't care about the presidents. We cut out early in a seamless blitz of nylon sheen. Our thighs were staggering, our stretches legendary, counting 4, 5, 6. We swore we saw the bleachers flinch. We licked our palms and scrubbed our sneakers clean and couldn't stand the Pentecostal teams with their set shots and culottes. What was worse than modesty? And who could top our coach, destroying clipboards, screaming, "Get your man," whose fury was the only compliment we'd ever trusted. Most of us believed that suffrage meant collective suffering. We weren't discerning, but we weren't unsure. Our trick plays worked. We wore each other's sweat. Our pregnant captain didn't know it yet. So there's a series of poems that runs through this book. They're prose poems, and they feature this character, this woman named Hope, and who's the speaker of the poem's cousin. And they sort of track her through various points of this kind of tense relationship between these two women, kind of close but tense, and sort of coming together and pulling apart. And so this is the first one. It's also the second poem in the book, but it's the first poem from this series, and it's called A Supermarket in Tennessee. The title is an allusion to Allen Ginsberg's great poem, A Supermarket in California, which features Walt Whitman poking meat in the refrigerator, like the refrigerator cases. I forget exactly what the line is, but it's like, I see you, Walt Whitman, poking the meats. But I always think about that. And at one point, Allen Ginsberg was in this poem, but I edited him out eventually. So this is A Supermarket in Tennessee. The morning after my cousin Hope won $200 for beating the crap out of a woman on stage at Blanchard's, I went to Kroger. I used to worship her, older, taller, tougher, my very own ego's fog machine. But there I was, freezing my ass off while I looked for what she needed. It'd been a week of new laws, headlines reading, wine in groceries, guns on campus. Both sides still buzzing, righteous, neither one appeased. Hope called to say her eye was swollen shut, and who was I to judge? Hadn't I huffed my share of duster? Didn't I make a boyfriend sexy magnets of me in hot pink underwear and different outfits he could change? He stuck them on his mini fridge, and there's no telling who all saw, but even then I knew I'd never run for office. Hope took the pictures for me. This was before I left for college, before the Kroger was a Kroger, just a rundown store where Hope got caught stealing blueberries. My mother said that was the moment things went south, as if someone suddenly starts stealing blueberries. I want to claim I haven't been unkind. There is so much that mortifies us later. I don't think about what happened to the magnets. I don't think about the students I should arm myself against. Who knows what's worth $200 once you're 6 drinks in at Blanchard's? They call it foxy boxing. Hope's face was puffed up worse than I expected, but of course, I lied and said it wasn't bad. I brought her what she wanted, a box of white and ice. As kids, our favorite game was diner. I cut and glued the menu's paper food, and we'd spend hours taking orders. So this book took me a minute. And while I was working on it, I went through several different kind of phases of types of poems. And one phase that was really ill-begotten in the long run was I was writing these poems that involved anagrammatic constraints. So I would like choose a line. A lot of times it was a line from another poet. Sometimes it was a line I came up with, and then I would rework that line over and over as anagrams and all the other lines in the poem. And I don't really know how to talk about why I was doing that, but it was a way to sort of get myself unstuck. Is the short answer without going deep into psychology. But anyway, I ended up cutting a lot of those poems from the book, but a few of them are still in the book. And so I felt like I should read one of them. And this is a weird poem to read aloud. I mean, it's my book launch, so I'm going to do it. But but this poem is called 43 Ways to an Oracle. And the line that it uses is it's the first line of Elizabeth Barrett Browning's Sonnet 43, which is like a famous, how do I love thee, let me count the ways, a famous sonnet. And I've always kind of been irritated by that sonnet because for lots of reasons. Everybody knows it, and you hear it all the time, but also if you actually count the ways, it's like 6 or 7 ways, which she means it figuratively, but I think that's really funny. Anyway, but so I wrote this poem where someone is actually kind of obsessively counting the ways that they might love somebody else. So it's an anagram poem that reshuffles this line from Elizabeth Barrett Browning, but it's also a sonnet and it's also a list poem, but the list kind of starts to break down. So hopefully with all of that intro, this will make this an easier poem to read. But anyway, this is 43 ways to an oracle. And I'm gonna go ahead and count the ways, the way that the poem does, so that you'll know what number we're on. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. 1, autonomy. 2, elective howl. 3, showed teeth. 4, used the veto. 5, with hello. 6, a wet economy. 7, clothed. 8, two-tone. 9, elusive. 10, the way home. 11, at home. 12, coveted. 13, until we see how. 14, hotly. 15, steely hot. 16, on leave. 17, with too much weed. 18, too loosely. 19, due theme. 20, in vacuo. 21, the we. 22, tentatively we. 23, somehow. 24, the loud echo. 25, the détente. 26, touchily. 27, a wholesome vow. 28, the old way. 29, cue the wolves. 30, the emotion. 31, semi-devoutly. 32, how we once. 33, at the hotel. 34, wholesale. 35, mute too. 36, in the towed Chevy. 37, when woe lets me. 38, to the void. 39, oh, acutely. 40, sweetly. 41, moved out. 42, alone. 43, with the echo. So I was driving one time back from Birmingham on my way to Memphis. And sometimes when I'm driving like that, I'll listen to the local radio. I really like sort of local backroads Mississippi country stations sometimes. And so I was listening to this radio and they do this thing, the commodities report, where they're like, a bale of cotton is the price this week on a bale of cotton is X, but then there were these announcements for what, I don't know exactly where I was when this happened, because I was just somewhere in the middle of Mississippi. But there was a thing on the radio where they were doing these announcements about like, oh, so-and-so has a wake coming up. And then there was an announcement, and it was Clark Ford would like to share that his wife is still mad at him for no reason. And I just really loved that so much. And I like immediately wrote it down, and I kept thinking about it. I kept thinking about Clark Ford, and I was just pretty sure that his wife had a good reason to be mad at him based on the fact that he made a radio announcement. So anyway, so I wrote this poem, kind of imagining Mrs. Clark Ford's point of view, but it's called Local Woman Makes a Casserole. And it has as an epigraph the line, Clark Ford would like to share that his wife is still mad at him for no reason. So I turned a little feral, turned a little burn it to the ground, the bridge, the nest, the rubber to your glue, what have you. So I put a cone of shame around his roses, chopped the parsnips harder than I really needed to. So I called the mushrooms motherfuckers, started using words like squamous, tombsome, slew, and saying, stop picking at your snake tattoo. Stop playing Mr. Soul. Stop jacking off in front of the dog. Stop asking me, where's tombsome in the dictionary? Did I turn a little vicious? Sure. Mixed sawdust in the breadcrumbs, printed out his history, made a shirt that said, well, boo fucking who, then made the dog one too. So I went a little crazy with the sage. I'm talking floor to ceiling, smudging every room. Ask me how long I'd waited for the right occasion. Ask me how long I stayed the same, like a plate commemorating time's big bummer, like the placid lake of someone else's summer. just gonna read a couple more. So let's see here. This is another Hope poem. It's a good poem to read for a Memphis crowd. I think there's a fair amount of Memphis people in the crowd, but it's about Elvis Week, which if you're not from Memphis, it happens on the anniversary of Elvis's death, which is August 16th, and it's a whole week of festivities related to Elvis, lots of tribute bands and Elvis impersonators. It's always just god awful hot. And I actually heard this year, Priscilla is apparently supposed to be here for Elvis Week, so it's kind of exciting. As you might imagine, last year Elvis Week did not happen, so they're going to do just a bang up job. But this is Hope comes to Elvis Week. We go to Graceland for the vigil. Hope in the same fuchsia tube dress she wore to our grandpa's funeral. But it's okay this time around. Nobody hissing about what's appropriate. Not in Memphis in August, 99 at dusk. The dew point making people's hair deranged. We clutch our little candles from their cardboard cuffs, and mine keeps going out, Hope leaning over to relight it. There are as many Elvises as Elvis fans, old and not so old, and from the farthest reaches, rolling strollers, luggage, oxygen tanks. So many stick-on sideburns, so many ways to sweat. I don't know it yet, but Hope's blurred out on pills again. We both buy buttons with the lightning logo, taking care of business in a flash. One too tall Elvis strums a ukulele, strolling up and down the line along the gates and nodding solemnly. The crowd just slightly hushed. Hope says, "Can you imagine being loved this much?" So the title, I've never had a book with a title poem before. It's a funny thing to have a book with a title poem. But this poem, in some ways, I do feel, I feel like it deserves to be the title poem, because it was when I wrote this poem that the book kind of started to click into place for me. But I wrote this poem a little while after I went to this convention called the Survival Expo and Guns. I don't know if you guys can hear. My dog is very loudly drinking water in the background. She's like trying to drink water as loud as she can. She never does that. But I went to this convention called the Survival Expo and Gun Show, and it was like a gathering of people that are interested in extreme prepping. And so there were you could buy like self-stable food, you could buy lots of weapons, you could tour fallout shelters and things like that. And so I went with a friend, and and it was a little bit unsettling, but I kept thinking about the experience afterwards. So that's what this poem is about. But this poem also references something called the Glass Delusion, which was a psychological condition, but I think it was most popular in the Middle Ages, and the most famous sufferer of the Glass Delusion was King Charles the Sixth. But the way that it worked was that you would actually believe that your bones or your skin was made of glass, and so you would then try to go to extreme measures to protect yourself. So like King Charles the Sixth had all these crazy padded suits that he would walk around with. Anyway, that's like two short lines in this poem, but it's just when that's what it's talking about when I get to that part. So, all right, the Survival Expo. It's mostly men inside the Agri Center, pricing seed vaults and metal shelters, knives and MREs spread over dressed up tables like alms for fraught apostles. Take, eat. And we expected this, my friend and I, but came in anyway, for fun, I guess. Except to me, it feels a little like a test to prove how out of place we aren't, which I'll acknowledge is a flaw of mine. This tendency to double down, pretending things are fine, a tactical response. Like when my friend tells me she's feeling better, and all I do is compliment her hair, how thick it's growing in, how glad I am. Before I train my focus on the man selling disaster rations meant for pets. Taste tested, he explains, on cats, since dogs will eat whatever, but cats are picky bastards. And see, his pack will hold a month's supply. And here's a pocket for your gas mask. And here's a pamphlet about chemtrails too. But it's the truth. We're sorely unprepared for even minor hazards, acts of God and whatnot. Living as we do along a semi-dormant fault in Tennessee, our billboards lit with shot theology and ads that flash, yes, silencers are legal. So I can understand why there's a line for 20-minute background checks. This being a thoroughly American response to background checks in fear, compared to, say, the Middle Ages, how King Charles VI, believing he was made of glass, sewed iron bars into his clothes and hardly moved and wouldn't let himself be touched, so scared of shattering, which just goes to show the kingdom of the self will always be the hardest to defend. I wonder what he'd think to see us probing superior illumination, lamps that burn for 40 days and charge your phone. Something my friend could use, she tells me, texting a picture to her husband, who responds, I think you ought to leave the Agri Center. But then we get distracted by these cards with punch-out tools that fit inside your wallet. So if you're stranded in the wilderness or captured and have access to your wallet, you might save yourself. What can it hurt, we say, and stand there for a while comparing options. Snare locks, fish hooks, saw blade, handcuff shim. Because you never know what you'll walk into, and the Agri Center smells like kettle corn, and my friend is feeling better, done with chemo, and I don't know what to say, but can't shut up. Just keep reloading wrong words through the last packed aisles and turnstiles back to Saturday. Appalled, of course, but not ungratified by all these ways we have to stay alive. All right, I'm gonna read one more and then we can get out of here. This is one more hope poem, and it's the last poem in the book. It's called Nostos, which of course is a Greek word. It means homecoming, a homecoming of sorts. Nostos. Hope holds her card so close. I don't know how she voted. I'm afraid to ask. Like me, she's always leaving lives behind, changing her mind about what's feasible. Hope was 7 states away the night her dad got tanked and drove into a ditch, banged up where passers-by could see how deep he'd finally spiraled. 2 Thanksgivings later, here we are. Hope thinks some stories dog you your whole life. I think she's right. It's hard to come back home, or where home was, where part of you still partly is, which is why we wind up 2 grown women at the batting cages, the all-day gray, a sort of syntax we're suspended in. I figured we'd both have a couple kids by now, Hope says, and then, did you ever want to climb inside the bucket on the Bojangles sign? I did, I tell her all the time, and maybe even mean it. When Hope goes in again, I picture us exalted, turned slowly over fryer fumes and traffic, the strip mall sweep of wheezing industry, the concrete where we set our feet, choke up, and swing it down the middle pitches we hit easily. It's been forever since I felt so happy. That's it.
Hi, that was so great.
What do we do now?
I think we just, you bask in the applause that's happening in the chat, which there's much of and very deserved. What a great audience. Oh my gosh. And then I think we move to some of these Q&A questions.
Yeah.
People put some Q&As in the actual chat, and then somebody else put them in there. If y'all have I think we're getting some of those questions may be hard to get to that are in the chat, y'all. If you can find, there's a separate Q&A box down there. If you go to the bottom of your screen and hover, it should pull up. Down there where chat and participants, record, share screen, all that stuff is, there should be a Q&A. So even if you already asked it in chat, if you can like copy paste it into Q&A, that would be tops. I can see some other people.
Oh yeah, I see some too.
There we go. Okay, so the first question is, oh y'all, I don't even know how to go about this. I guess I don't think the audience can see it. So the question is, casting yourself as the Three Stooges, which of you is Mo, which one's Larry, and who's Curly? Marcus and Kaki, you discuss amongst yourselves.
Well, I often use the curly girl method, so obviously me.
Yeah, you're Curly. I think I would be Mo. I'm not sure why, but my grandmother had at her house, she had a doll that was he was like a bust of a doll that was Mo. He had been like one of my uncles or something, and I was obsessed with it when I was a kid. So I would always like go to her house and play with the Mo doll. So I'm gonna say Mo. So that leaves you as Larry, Karina. How do you feel about that?
How I feel honestly is I'm a Marx brother, not a Three Stooge. If I'm part of a comedic group of men. Props for creativity, Clark.
Yes,
Starting it out on a great surreal note there. All right. So Brent says, amazing reading, first of all. Says, as Memphis poets, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what unique qualities Memphis has as a muse. I love this question. Marcus, you want to take it first?
Sure. I would say the local flora and fauna, like flowering trees, for instance, magnolia trees. Lately, I've been thinking about the intersection of wealth and poverty, and how sometimes in Memphis it exists like one corner away, like one block there are mansions, and the next a sort of seedy area. And the way that people talk about that, I guess, that's started to work its way into my poems, I guess. Yeah. How about y'all?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the definitely the flora. I mean, I don't know how many people have been, well, I guess a lot of people do live here that are in the group, but if you haven't been to Memphis, I was just, I mean, Tennessee is just freaking beautiful. And I sit out, I mean, I write all my poetry out here on this porch. Just hearing the birds and seeing the canopy around me, it's I feel really blessed. And also, like, well, it's a cliche. I mean, I feel like I come from a music city. I come from Austin, Texas, but this is like a different quality of Music City. Within like the first week of coming here, we went to like Al Green's church, and like Al Green is singing, and praising right in front of us. And and it's just, there's a magic here. There's a magic and a music that's just flowing through things. And that sounds a little woo-woo, but I do believe it's true. What about you, Kaki?
Yeah, I think both of those things. I mean, I ended up with a lot of like Memphis stuff in this book that I didn't really realize was happening. Like it wasn't ever something I set out to do. It just kind of leaked its way in. But I think all of the things you guys said, I mean, I think the class stuff is like something that you can't help but think about a lot around here. But also like people are like, they will just talk to you in Memphis. And so like I have a poem in the book about my neighbors, but I'm constantly thinking about my neighbors. Like I feel like I know so much about them, especially after the pandemic. And I feel like, but even just like we're, at the store, people will just walk up to you and tell you so much stuff. I really appreciate that. I like how kind of open and just like out with all of their stuff people are. And that's something, but it is interesting. Like I've wondered if there's like, is there something similar we're all doing in our poems that is coming from Memphis? Maybe we don't know yet, but that's kind of an interesting question I thought about.
Well, I mean, I do think we all are keen observers, and I think Memphis is a good place to be an observer and to listen to the sounds of conversation and dialogue around you. I definitely get inspired a lot by that.
Yeah, there's a certain seasoned speech that Memphians have that I haven't heard elsewhere. Like when I got here, people called it the Memphis mumble.
That's okay.
I think that's because they can't hear it, but really, it's sort of like this sort of bluesy, soulful mash of syllables one after another. And I love that. That's great for poetry.
Yeah, totally. Should we move to the next question? We've got a question from Joel, who says, love each of these readings. Thanks, Joel. Question for any of you. Do you ever feel discouraged writing mid-poem with the thought, somebody else has already said these things? If so, how do you move forward and finish the poem confident in creating an original work? Khaki, you have thoughts about this?
You guys are like, ooh, okay. I mean, I think I do. I definitely do. And I think a lot of times for me, what happens is I finish a poem and I'm like, this is great. And I feel that way for like 24 hours. And then it sets in that it's not great. And that, like, someone has said this or done, or that's my feeling, you know, is that someone has said or done this before. And so then there's like the deep sadness of realizing that you were thinking you'd written the brilliant thing. And that's really hard. But I mean, I think that's honestly not the worst thing. I mean, I think if that's tripping you up every time you write, that's bad. But I think it sometimes is right. And that sometimes it means you need to work harder on the poem, or you need to write another poem and another poem. That's one side of it. But the other side of it is that sometimes, like, it's okay to say something someone has said before too. Like, there are only so many things to say. That you know, in all of literature, we've only really been saying like 5 things over and over in different ways. And so I think that, like, letting that be, you know, put pressure on you if it's keeping you from writing. I don't know if this question seems like it might be coming from personal experience, but even if it's not, like, if one feels like they are pressured, you know, mid poem or mid whatever they're writing, because they're thinking about like originality and inheritance and all that stuff, like that can be, you know, that can be kind of a crippling thing. So I think it's kind of a balance, but that sometimes that inner critic isn't the worst thing. Sometimes that can be, you know, you have to know when to listen to it and when to tell it to, you know, shut the hell up.
Yeah. When it's the imposter syndrome voice talking versus when it's like the realist who's going, you've seen this before, something very similar to this before. You know, yeah, I agree. There's a handful of topics. I love you. I miss you. I did you wrong. Praise, whatever. You know, I mean, there's, you know, F, whatever. I mean, there, you know, there's a number of formats. But I guess the question is, like, you should ask yourself, how can I say it like nobody else says it, right? Like, am I saying it in my voice, or am I trying to take on somebody else's voice, which can be instructive. I've definitely learned a lot from taking on other people's voices. But you also know, sometimes you write a poem that's like technically good, but you know it's not you. You know it's in somebody else's voice, it's aping somebody else's style, and it just feels kind of wrong. You know, listen to that. But don't let it trip you up when you're trying to get in your flow state. Get in your flow state. Tell that voice to shut up.
There you go. LIG. No, one practical thing you could do, I mean, one practical thing I do is I just take obsessive notes about everything. And I go back and I read several pages and I think, if there's a thing that's coming up again and again, that means I've got some sort of unconscious obsession going on. And then I write the poem. And then I don't worry so much, right? If there's a clunky line, I'll just challenge myself to go back and fix it. But I think that if I'm looking at all my thoughts and I'm making sure that, like, here are the original ones, here are the ones that are less than, by culling through in advance, I stop myself from believing that every thought I've ever had is a poem.
Well, I hope that helped, Joel. We also have a question from Kelsey. For all three, what was one thing that kept coming up writing your most recent collections that was surprising or unexpected?
I mean, I already said one of the things for me was the like Tennessee stuff that it happened gradually. And so that was like, I just didn't realize how much of it there was. And there's not a ton of it, but I mean, there is definitely some of it. But the other one that's super weird for this collection is like farming, like animal husbandry. It's like there's a poem called Animal Husbandry, and then there's a whole poem about ant farming that's not really, it's not really about ant farming, but it kind of is. But then there's like a poem with shepherds in it, and I just like, I don't care at all about farming or even usually think about it, but for some reason that was like became this like metaphor or conceit that I kept returning to. So that was strange and surprising.
I mean, that's a really tough question to answer. It was surprising or unexpected. I mean, things would come up that are surprising and unexpected, but usually that's like a good thing. That's me like doing something I don't normally do. When I start to worry is when the poems aren't surprising me, you know, when there isn't anything unexpected, and then but there's nothing wrong with it, but there's also no surprise. That's when I get into like, am I imitating myself? You know, that thing. So yeah, I tried to kind of follow the surprises where they led, but I'm not sure there's like a specific thing. I mean, I always end up being surprised by how many times I use a certain word in a given manuscript. When you start looking that up, I'm like, for real with the bathtubs again? You know, it wasn't bathtubs this time. I think it was like the word Eddie. What about you, Marcus?
I feel like you answered that question very well.
Well, we don't have any more. Oh wait, one just came in. It's toward you. Okay. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, well, yeah, we need to wrap it up in a second, I think.
Yeah, well, maybe Kaki can answer this one last question.
Yeah, I just saw that. Okay, this is a good one.
Yeah. Kaki, you're a collector and a creator of tiny things. For example, a 1/16 scale charcuterie board. Does this fascination have any tie-in to your writing? Is it important? I love this question. Is it important to be able to shrink things down? If not, maybe just tell us about your collection anyway. I'm sure people would love to hear more about this side of you. Smiley face.
Yeah, I love that question too. I've thought about it a lot in connection to writing, like my love of tiny things. And I think that might be part of it is like the shrinking things down, like to have, like there's this kind of control that you have over a tiny world, whether that's like the tiny world of a poem or the tiny world of a book or the tiny world of your charcuterie boards or your tiny fruits or whatever. But I think that my last book there, the character Winona, that was like an obsession of hers. She was always like, literally she was building these tiny things. And so it was something I had done in the past, and then I kind of got back into it like as I was writing that book, because I was like trying to get inside of Winona's head. But that tiny thing has persisted. I really do. Like I just kind of, I don't know what it is, but it's kind of a delightful thing. There's a great book by Susan Stewart, who's a poet and also a really great critical writer, but she called On Longing, and it's like, I forget the subtitle. It's like On Longing, narratives of the, and there's three things, but one of them is the miniature, and she has a whole way of talking about like why we love, I think it's like the souvenir, there's something else in the miniature, but she has a great way of talking about why we love the miniature, and it's kind of like it has to do with that, and like sort of this desire to like to have something that's like safely enclosed. And I think, yeah, so I think it definitely ties into the poems. I also just really love tiny things though. They make me happy.
But also I feel like a poem is a tiny thing.
It totally is.
You exert total control over every aspect of a small piece of writing, you know. That's why I get so mad when people are like, poets are just lazy novelists. I'm like, it's totally different.
It is. It's totally different.
Thank you so much. This is amazing. I don't really want to bring this to an end, but I was given my cue, came back on. It's been an hour. The talent needs to go eat dinner, have some drinks, do whatever they're going to do with the rest of their night. It sounds like there's maybe a gathering in the works, which made me very happy to hear. So anyway, for each of your next books, I hope that we can do this in person, but this has been very lovely, even on Zoom, and I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks to our audience, thanks to our amazing poets and what they brought to us tonight, and the conversation and the laughs. And congratulations, Kaki.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gonna buy your book tomorrow. I resolved, having heard these poems.
Good. That makes me happy. That's what I want to win. I want to win people over. So, well, thanks. I hope that I see all of you soon. Some of you soon. I'm going to see you sooner than later. So that's nice.
All right. Have a great night, everyone. And this will be recorded and posted to our YouTube within a couple of days. So this might be a repeat. Some of y'all want to experience. I know I probably will. Y'all have fun. Have a good night. Congratulations again, Kaki. Thank you again, Marcus and Karyna.
Bye.
Take care.
Night.